Welcome to the 2% Club, where we talk all things work, wealth, and wellness with the founders, funders, and forward thinkers rewriting old playbooks with intention. I'm your host, Rachel Hirsch, venture investor, wellness operator, and founder of Wellness Growth Ventures. Each week, we dive into bold conversations about scaling companies, building wealth, investing wisely, and staying mostly sane while doing it. Welcome back to the 2% Club, where we talk all things work, wealth, and wellness. I am your host, Rachel Hirsch, and today we have the incredible honor of having founder of Beyond Yoga, Michelle Wahler on. Michelle, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
But it's so good to have you here. Thank you for making time.
Of course. I'm so happy to be here.
Okay, I think everyone knows who you are, but will you give a little background for those who aren't familiar with you or Beyond Yoga?
Absolutely. So my name is Michelle. I co-founded Beyond Yoga almost 20 years ago at this point, and which feels crazy to say. I started it with my business partner, Jody, who she was actually the person who had the vision for the brand. And when we started, the whole idea was about making clothing for women of all shapes and sizes. And in the very beginning, when Jody and I were first introduced, I actually had a different company that I was working on, and somebody introduced me and Jody so that I could help her with some of the logistical things like getting a trademark and whatnot. And I started working with her, but I was very clear that I was going to be working on this other project. And just immediately I fell in love with the concept of Beyond Yoga and what it was all about. And one day I, was working in Jody and I used to work out of her home apartment. And I was sitting next to her and I heard her on the phone with the first person who ever designed anything for Beyond Yoga. And she was getting a little frustrated because the designer wasn't getting her vision. And when they got off the phone, I said to Jody, I was like, I know how to do that. Can I help you? And she was like, please. So I said, send me the file. And that night I went home and I fixed the sketches to be more in line with what I thought she wanted. And then I had some other ideas about what would be great for the brand. And I sent those to her. And the next morning she called me and she was like, our relationship is about to change.
Oh,
And
my goodness.
yeah. And pretty much from that point on, I spent the next 18 and a half years completely dedicated to Beyond Yoga, to building, growing, and running that company. And it was an incredible, incredible journey. It's wild that I've actually been out of the business for a year at this point, which also has been a really fun and rewarding journey. But my time at Beyond Yoga was amazing. And, I think we had a really unique journey because we never took on any additional capital outside of our initial, seed funding. And we grew the company organically and very, very thoughtfully. And then, we ended up selling the company after 16 years. And the reason we weren't even looking to sell, we weren't, out there pitching. But I got a LinkedIn message from Levi's and
Did you think it was fake?
oh, I definitely thought
Okay.
it. And, but I did a little recon and I was like, oh, this
Right.
person's legit.
Actually works there.
So I had to, so I ended up meeting with this woman and we had a great conversation. And I actually thought that the first conversation I thought we were having was about doing a collaboration. And then at the end of our conversation, she's like, I'd love for you to talk to our CFO. And then I was like, oh, this is going to be bigger than a collaboration. And, it turned out to be an incredible opportunity. We ended up selling to Levi's, and I got the opportunity to join the executive leadership team at Levi Strauss. And I stayed on and led the transition, stayed on as CEO and ran Beyond Yoga for 2 years under Levi's. And then last February, I stepped down and I have been refilling my cup and spending a lot of time with female founders and um, my family and just
Mother of the year right here.
just recharging my battery. But I get a lot of joy from spending time with female founders and entrepreneurs and, up and coming leaders. And so it's been really fun to have time to give back to that community.
I love that. You touched on so many things I want to double tap into, but we'll start in the beginning. What made you know that this was something that you were like, I should give up what I wanted to work on originally because this has legs and I want to go the distance with it?
I think if you've ever worn Beyond Yoga,
That's so
um,
real.
you know, so most people, when you think of Beyond Yoga, you think of space dye, but that wasn't the fabric we launched with. We actually launched with a different fabric, which at the time was the softest thing I had ever touched. It was called Supplex and it was amazing. It was soft, but it was just thick enough that it covered any cellulite.
Mm.
And our sizing from, our inception mission was always to be inclusive and to make people feel good about themselves the moment they put the clothing on. Not just like, oh, you have to work out to get into your workout clothing. And so even when Beyond Yoga was in its like first version in Supplex, I was like, oh, this is something everybody needs in their wardrobe. It wasn't until probably 5 years into the business that at a very important fabric meeting, I came across the fabric that we are now known for. But for a long time, these two fabrics ran side by side, and they were a great complement. One was a solid, one had a little heathered texture. But I knew that I wanted to wear it every day, and I knew everyone else would want to as well. And it was just a matter of getting it on people's bodies. And once we started doing that and, we started getting some brand recognition, then we started expanding beyond leggings and we had great layering pieces. And we were really dressing a woman from morning till night.
Yeah.
Eventually we started dressing them through, with sleepwear through the night. But we just wanted to be that go-to comfort for around the clock. And I just knew.
Okay, but growing it without outside capital. So we have gone in on this a little bit, but I think it's such an important conversation. Can you go into some of the nitty gritty of how you did it, how you knew that was the right thing to do? Even at other points, I imagine there was VC capital that came your way that you could have said yes to, and the decision to turn it down.
Sure. I think that I treated running Beyond Yoga a lot like the way I treat my life. And so
Hmm.
I never like to get in front of, ahead of my skis. I never want to be in debt. I'm always like, what can I afford? Okay, make sure you put this aside. Like, always saving for a rainy day. And background history, my father was an entrepreneur and a very successful one at that. He had a chain of music stores in Washington, D.C. And, he grew from one location to over 30, one, small business retailer of the year. And then he unfortunately went out of business because of, the shifting climate of
Hmm.
MP3s and Napster back in the day. And it just really, the whole music landscape changed in almost the blink of an eye. And I watched my father, who had spent his whole life building something, lose it almost overnight. And I think growing up with that experience, I think
Yeah.
I was always a very cautious
Yeah.
entrepreneur. So I'm glad it didn't discourage me from being an entrepreneur, but I think that it definitely showed me the realities of what can happen
Yeah.
and that fear um, you know, made me want to move at a slightly slower pace than maybe some other entrepreneurs who were like, let's go for broke. I was like, let's not. Let's just build a healthy business. My vision has always been to grow and, steady growth. I didn't want highs and lows and then having to like let go of team members. I wanted to grow and, all of us grow together. And, and so we had a lot of opportunities to bring on outside investment. People tried to buy us, people tried to invest in us.
Oh my goodness.
And, I think some of the most important things you can do in business is say no. And, I think it's more important the things you say no to than the things you say yes to. And I I just remember, I remember the first opportunity someone came to us and wanted to buy us for $1 million. And thank God
Can you imagine?
we didn't do that. And I remember later, getting an offer for 15 million and turning that down too. And, these were really hard conversations for, for me and Jody. And also backing up, I ended up hiring my husband
I love this.
once I married him. So he
I
joined.
like the once I married him caveat. I really do appreciate that.
Well, I just don't want people to think I was predatory and going after my employees.
No. I was almost thinking, until he already legally got half, he was not involved in this company.
So he, from the beginning, he was always a very important person in the journey. We really connected over our mutual passion for business, and we just would chat about things all the time. And he actually started a company while we were dating. And at some point I was like, can you please stop helping? He was building his own, he was helping other people scale, and I was like, can you please stop helping everybody else and come help me?
I love this.
And then he was like, fine, I'll come for a little while. And I think it was right around when I got pregnant. I just announced to the team, I was like, oh, by the way, Jesse's going to be the interim COO, CFO. And I don't even know if we had discussed it. And I just made
I'm obsessed with you.
But he, I don't know how I would have ever been able to step away from the business to, go and give birth and do all the things if I hadn't had him by my side. And the intention was just for this to be a short-term thing, but I think he fell in love with the business and he stayed. And we grew the business together for over a decade, and he was very instrumental in, he was basically my day-to-day business partner. And when we sold the company, we didn't have any bankers. We did have a fantastic lawyer, but it was me and Jesse and our lawyer navigating the entire negotiation, the deal, all of the diligence. So it was a very unique.
Wow. That is incredible and wildly impressive.
It was very ridiculous. Looking back on it, I'm like, I can't believe we actually pulled that off. But it was, also we didn't tell anybody on our team that we were going through the acquisition because I didn't want to distract anybody. And I thought the odds of Levi's actually buying us, they're probably talking to all these other companies, and what are the odds this is really going to happen? And it was very distracting for me and for Jesse because we were, doing our day jobs and
being bankers
and running this process. And, so it was a crazy time when I look back on it, for sure. But
amazing.
But it was very cool too.
So I'm digging in a little more, and you can tell me to stop, but were you profitable from the beginning, or how did you figure out how to grow? Because I get this question all the time when I speak with founders. They don't know that there are other options out there. How did you grow the business from the beginning?
So from the beginning, all right, Jody had an initial investment from her father, which was amazing. So her dad gave us, seed money to begin, and, he owned a small percent of the company as a result of that. And we worked tirelessly to be able to pay him back.
Right.
But we were almost always break even. We
That's
you know,
amazing.
I can't say that we were profitable, but we would, we ran the company to break even. So we
Right.
weren't going to, spend a lot of money on taxes, and we would continue to invest
Brilliant.
in building the infrastructure, building the inventory, to take us to the next level. But we definitely met a lot of obstacles for not being profitable. When we wanted to take out a loan for growth, they were like, "Oh,
Oh,
you don't have profit, then, and you're not at X% of sales." I think they were looking for us to be at like 25 million in order to take out a loan. We were like, "All right, well, we won't be able to do that." We were able to factor because we had a healthy wholesale business. So we were able to
mm,
factor those purchase orders. And I worked with CIT, and they were instrumental in our growth.
okay.
And so, for those of you who don't know, if you are factoring, basically, if you get a sales order from a wholesaler, when you get that order, you can submit it to your factor. They'll check it for credit, and then they basically buy it off of you. And so you get that money so you can start, producing the goods, and you have that money in advance, and they take a small fee for that, and they get paid, net 30 or net 60, whatever the terms are. So that really helped us with our
Yeah.
cash flow. But we also were extremely hawkish on, every dollar we spent. And one of the reasons I was thinking to bring, to tell you about Jesse is because when he did join us, he was laughing at me. He was like, "You should be spending more money." And usually a CFO is not going to,
Not saying that ever. I've never heard that. I
right?
love this.
Yes, but he was like, you guys have built an amazing business. You have incredible product, great distribution. You need to invest more. You need to have more inventory. You need to invest more in your team.
Mm,
And so that's when I started leaning in and making bigger hires. And
okay.
I brought on an incredible woman out of Google and Tom's, who ran our marketing. And when you're going to invest in people, you can't just think short sighted about the one person you're going to bring on. You have to think about what does that person need around them.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just investing in her, but then it was bringing on the team members under her and giving her the ability to grow that. Obviously, we were taking a bet that she was going to grow our top line, which she did. And then we also brought on a head of sales out of Under Armour. And then, she also brought on different people. And so, again, that grew top line, and we were able to continue that. And then we would be like, all right, what's the next area we're going to move into? So I was doing all of our merchandising and all of our planning, and I am not formally trained in any of that. And I would literally do it after everybody had gone to sleep. Like, it would be like, all right, it's 11 o'clock at night, I'm going to come up with a line plan. And
Oh my goodness.
I would take all of the data. I'd be like, oh, I actually would call all of our reps in the early days, and I would say, all right, here are the 5 colors of supplex that we're going to have. I need you to rank what you think you're going to sell. And then I had different territory reps, and then I had a little calculation that I would do in a spreadsheet. And my husband teases me. He's like, "You should never be the one in Excel." But I did all of this in Excel. And I was like, if this is how much we're going to use. This is our average, amount of fabric yield per style. And I think we're going to have this much growth. And then I would calculate, and I would buy the fabric based off of, my massaging of all of that. And we bought all of our fabric, brought it all into LA, and produced everything locally. But because I had a sales team, they were out pre-selling what we were going to make. So I had the colors, and I had to make a bet on the fabric and the colors, but I had the ability to adjust, if one bra sold better than a can or something. I had the ability to change how much of something I was buying. But eventually we built out a planning team, and that was also exceptionally helpful. But in the beginning, you really have to do everything yourself. And I don't regret doing any of those things myself because it gave me a profound understanding of what everybody on my team did. And that was really helpful as we grew. When we'd be in conversations, I could talk the talk with the planning team. I could talk with the marketing team. I could talk with the product developers. And I think that that is, completely invaluable. And sometimes I think people think the goal is to get investment. I think the goal is to make money.
Say it
And
again.
the goal is to make money.
Honestly.
And so I think that if I had had more money in the beginning, I might not have had the opportunity to wear all of those different hats and walk in all of those different shoes. And I don't think I would have learned everything and understood the business to the detail that I did. And I think that is really what was our secret sauce, was that, we really understood every facet of the business. And, we also were obsessed with our customer and just really wanted to make clothing for her that was going to make her feel amazing and supported. And, it wasn't, yes, the goal was making money, but I think that in our business, product was the queen.
Yeah.
And, the people around product and the people on the team were the princesses. And the money came because of that.
Right.
So, if you don't have a product that people love, you can have a great marketing message and you can sell, you can make money, but eventually that fizzles out. But we were definitely a product first company, and I think that's why, the company has survived 20 years, and I am confident it will survive well beyond that.
Continue to be blown away. Were there different points within your growth where the rate of growth was, you hit a milestone or you hit an unlock and it was like, yeah, we were growing pretty decent and then all of a sudden this, and we were growing pretty decent and all of a sudden this?
Let me think. So I think in the first few years, it was slower growth. It was still 100% growth year over year, but when you're on smaller numbers,
Right.
that seems larger than, when you're further along in your business, and it's obviously a lot harder to grow once you're larger.
Yeah.
But there were definitely milestones. And I think, some of the key accounts that we got into, like a Nordstrom or a Bloomingdale's or Equinox, those were wildly important for our visibility and for our brand awareness and, and our credibility. And I think that a lot of people think that if you have a direct to consumer business and then you go into wholesale, that, it's going to cannibalize each other. But the reality is it just rises the tide. The
Right.
more
More
people,
touch.
more touch points, that you can find a brand at, I think the better. I am constantly, I don't want to say preaching, but I think I'm going to say preaching
I love it.
about the benefits of wholesale. It is actually, you are getting paid to market your product because people are paying you to have it in their stores. But when people see that, that is marketing and brand awareness. And we spent a lot of time. I'm a big fan of saying no.
I need this. I need to learn this.
But I said no to a lot of opportunities. And my sales team would kind of get frustrated with me sometimes because they were like, oh my gosh, I could get us a, a $3 million deal if we'll go into Kohl's, or I could get us this if we go into that account. And I was like, I appreciate the enthusiasm. I love that you're going for it, but that's not right for our brand. And we need to be in, in these few places. And
Right.
everybody wanted everything to be online. And I was like, we can't be on every website. We need to be selective. We need to be in the premium websites. We need to be in the right places. So it was a bit of a, like a push pull between me and the sales team. And I love my sales team and they were incredible. But I said no a lot. But then I still held them to very high sales goals.
I love it.
So, it's important to not take the easy win and
Yeah.
and do the harder right for what is right for your brand. And we knew that down the road, we wanted to have our own brick and mortar stores. And that was always on the roadmap, but it wasn't something that we actually implemented until after we were acquired.
Oh,
And I think that was a really I think that was really important in our story, because when we were looking at, how we were positioning ourselves, I always wanted to make sure I knew that our website was going to be premium. I knew that our stores were going to be premium. And so I needed to make sure that every wholesale partner we were with was of the same caliber, because I didn't want anyone
cool.
undercutting what we were building.
Right. You're jack of all trades sounds like does not cut your ability to do everything. And I think for me and so many of my peers, I often hear it's like, well, I need to be trained in this. I don't know how to do this. But you just like the confidence to say, I don't know, but I'll figure it out. And like, I know I will do it well when I figure it out. That is more of that energy, please.
It actually all just kind of makes sense. Like, there's nothing about running a business that is, I mean, I'm talking about a retail business, that's super crazy. You want to figure out where you want your distribution to be. You don't want to be oversaturated. I loved the fact that we had such a diverse distribution network. We were in high-end gyms, we were in high-end resorts, we were in, the best accessible department stores. So the Nordstroms, the Bloomies. I mean, we were still in the high-end ones as well, like the Saks and the Neiman's, but the volume is more in a Nordstrom. Then we expanded to outdoor. So, we sold to REI, which was an amazing partner. We sold to Shields, which is an amazing outdoor partner in the Midwest. A lot of people on the coast don't know it, but if you live in the middle of the country, you know how amazing Shields is. And, and then we had an incredible distribution with all of the small, mom and pop studios, and then the different fitness modalities. And so we were in the Pure Bars, we were in, the Pilates studios, the yoga studios, the meditation studios, the rowing, like every different type of exercise you can do, we would partner with those different studio owners, and they were small business owners, and so it was really fun to support them.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it was a wild ride, but so much fun and so rewarding. And then the team that we built at Beyond Yoga was incredible. And we grew slowly, but as we grew, people were so excited about the people we were bringing on that they wanted to work
That's
with
cool.
those people.
Right.
So, they say like A players want to work with A players. Um, we didn't do a lot of like external recruiting. We did a lot of people bringing in people who they had worked with in the
Oh,
past
cool.
that were, rock stars at their previous, jobs, and people who they knew and they trusted. And that led to a lot less turnover. And it also led to bringing in a lot of people who were very aligned with our values.
Right.
We could never, we were never the organization that could pay the most, but we had a really unique work environment. We were like 90% female, and
So cool.
people loved it.
Right.
And we always took care of our team in, we were building the company that we always wanted to work for. So everybody got 3 free pieces of clothing every season. And because I wanted everyone to wear the
Right.
clothing and to love it, but it also gave me great feedback. If something was wrong, I knew
Yeah.
right away. And if
Yeah.
something was like gonna hit, I knew, because that's what my team was like. Everybody's trying to buy this one, putting in orders for this one top. I'm like, all right, we better
I
increase what
love
we're
this.
buying there, because this is hitting with, the women on my team. So
Right.
that was a great forecasting tool, but it also,
Amazing.
it just let my team know that we cared about them.
Right.
And then when we would do different, like, instead of like for a holiday party, getting everybody drunk and going somewhere, we were like, let's make a spa day.
Oh, stop. This is the dream.
We took our whole team. The first year we did it at Terranea, and the whole team, we got together. Everyone got to pick a spa treatment, and then we all hung out in our robes and had lunch in our
My
robes
goodness.
together. And as the company grew, we were doing better and better. We could do more for the team. So then we were like, and you can stay overnight. And then it became, I don't know, it just grew, and
I love this.
it became really special. And it was super sad for me when COVID hit that we didn't get to do our spa days anymore. But
I bet it was sad for everyone.
yes, I think it was a collective sadness that we weren't having that. But I am happy. Right before I left, that last holiday, we decided that we were going to do it again. And Jesse and I treated the team, and it was a big team at that point, but we treated everyone
Nice.
to a great spa day and an overnight. And um, you know, people were able to bring their significant others, and it's
Wow.
just like the little things that make people happy and know that
Yeah.
they're appreciated and valued. And that's what makes people want to work for you and want to
Yes.
work hard. And I don't know, what else can I tell you?
I love that. Okay, can we go into like the body inclusivity piece? Because you were sad to say this, but like you were way ahead of the curve. That was not something talked about. That wasn't something fashion was doing. That wasn't something fitness fashion specific. Like there that you were just leaps and bounds ahead. Was the consumer eager from the get, or like what was it like? Yeah.
So I think that the reason that we started that way was definitely because of my business partner, Jody, and her, lifelong struggle with body image and
Mm,
fitness. She grew up in Hollywood, and she wasn't, your typical size 2. She's gorgeous. She has a, incredible body, but she's curvy, and she is one of the most fit people I know. And she felt like there wasn't activewear designed for her. And, she would go in to buy something, and it would be like, this is a large. And it would be, disappointing to her.
yeah.
And there's so many women who don't fit the demographic
Yep.
of what these fit models that, clothing companies are creating their clothing for. So we decided that we were going to make something, and we're going to start fitting it on a size medium instead of like this tall drink
I'm
of
obsessed with
water
you.
size 2 and calling that a small. We're like, let's fit on a real woman, a size medium, and then we'll adjust up and adjust down. And most companies start with a size small, and then the model that they pick is usually smaller than what we would pick. And so from that, I feel like we already created something that was more for a real woman's body. And then we also would try it on different sizes. Like in the beginning, we would do full size runs and test it on all different people in our office. And we would be like, oh, we need to, adjust this up more. And we didn't just go by the traditional grade. We went by what made sense for the style, and it was more personalized. And I think that's why it worked so well.
Was that challenging with your manufacturer or within the industry, or
Yeah, it was a little challenging. So, definitely in the beginning, people didn't want to buy our extra larges. They didn't want to buy our larges because they were like, we just want to have, smaller clothing takes up a smaller footprint. And, a lot of people didn't have a lot of room. So they're like, oh, we'll just buy small through, extra small, small, and medium. And I'm like, but what about the other women? And they were like, oh, they can order online. And it was just, so I was constantly trying to convince our stores, just carry it. If it doesn't work, we'll take it back. But my production runs on the larger sizes had to be smaller because I wasn't selling as many in the beginning. And so I had to negotiate with my contractors, and I'd be like, can't you just make me 5 extra larges? And they were like, no. And I was like, but I really need you to do this. And, I think that's important. And I talk to a lot of people who are starting out right now. And it's very important to get your manufacturing partners on board with you and to tell them about your vision and tell them about your dream and get them to come along with you. Because if my early partners hadn't listened and agreed to do some of the things that weren't super traditional, I don't think we would have had, I don't think we could have ever gotten, out the door. And then we were able, it's kind of like you have to build it and then people know that they can buy it and it slowly grows. And, even in the beginning, we, didn't have the money to have different size women in our photo campaigns. And so, we had to, it took a while for this to build. And I remember being in, some of my accounts once we introduced the plus sizing, trying to remember what year that was. There was a lot of our accounts were like, it's gonna, we would look at it from a financial side and it was more fabric. My partners were the manufacturing partners. It took longer to sew a larger piece of clothing. They wanted to charge us more. And we had a decision to make, and we're like, this is going to be less profitable, but it, is where we believe, this is a very important part of our brand and we want to sure, we've always said size inclusive and we need to really, walk the walk, talk the talk, but we can't change the pricing on that. And so, we ended up taking margin hits on all of that, but it was worth it to really have our brand message. And then I had wholesale partners who, a few years ago, like Plus was, everybody wanted to have Plus. And I really wanted to make sure that they didn't go too fast because I was like, if you just buy all this inventory and put it in your store, it does not mean that that woman who has never found something in your store before is going to all of a sudden show up and feel like she's got, that there's going to be something for her. So we have to introduce it to her. We have to market it to her. We have to let her know we're here and supporting you now. So I actually had to tell a lot of my wholesale partners, I don't want to sell you what you're asking for. I'm going to cut your order in a third, and this is why. And
how did they respond?
They were like, you are a crazy CEO.
I love it. But yes.
But it was what was right for their business. And I think if you are not greedy and you do what's right for the consumer, you will have a healthy business. It's when, a lot of times when I talk to people about how they're pricing their garments or how they're pricing things, they're like, oh, well, once I get to scale, I will be able to bring my prices down. But right now I have to charge, some astronomical number in order to make these margins work.
Right.
And I'm like, you actually need to price things based on like what the market will bear. And if you come out the gate with something way too expensive, you'll never get off the ground. So you have to have a little bit of an understanding of where you're going and how long it'll take to get there, but you have to price something right for your market. I don't know. So many different things I'm talking about.
No, this is the problem is I have so many questions. We 100% need a part 2 if you're up for it, because there's so much I don't think we've touched within. We like just scratched the surface of accessibility and like really the uphill battle and the choices that you made as a CEO that I think people probably questioned, but that you stood strong with. And I think there's so much there to, at least from afar, I've appreciated. So
Well, I'd absolutely love to do a part 2. And, I think that was one of the things that was great about Beyond Yoga is that I didn't have outside funding. So it really was just, the team like it was me and Jody and Jesse and, for a small part, Jody's dad, but we were the ones who made all of the decisions, and we weren't just bottom line driven. We were customer driven and we were product driven. And that's what ultimately made us very successful, because I didn't have a lot of people questioning what I was doing. We just did what was right for our consumer and for our team.
you are incredible. I am like obsessed. And that through line has shown up throughout this whole conversation of you really being customer obsessed, the product being for the customer. So, I mean, as your customer, I feel that. So thank you.
Thank you. I love it.
We like to end with 5 like rapid fire type questions, 1 word, a sentence, but they're sort of fun.
Okay.
What is something you can't live without?
Besides my family, like a thing.
It can be your family. That's
Okay,
totally
I'm going with
acceptable
my
answer.
family.
What keeps you grounded?
Can I say my family?
A lot of people you're a mom. Like, yes. Who do you admire most?
Oh, I admire a lot of people. There are some incredible female founders that I've been blessed to spend time with lately. I'm gonna say my friend Ellen, who is the founder of Mendocino Farms.
I'm obsessed with her. She's coming on the podcast. So how perfect.
She's amazing, and she's been such a mentor to me as I've gone through this like post acquisition time frame. She pulled me aside, was like, "Let's grab lunch," and kind of helped me see what was coming. And I will forever be grateful to Ellen.
You two make so much sense as friends. You're like sure, like the resume side, but also just like really good, kind people that are very involved in the female founder space. So I love that. What makes you feel wealthy?
Having the time to do what I want. My friends laugh at me. They're like, "You're so busy." And I'm like, "I know, but I'm choosing my busy," which is something I didn't have the luxury of before. And so this is fun.
That might be the best answer we've ever had. I love that. What is something few people know about you?
Whew, I am a bit of an open book. So I don't know that my dog right now is going through chemotherapy and it's breaking my heart, but she's 17 years old, and I know I've had a really, really amazing run with her, but I'm going through a little heartbreak right now.
I have so much sympathy for that. I would not be coping as well as you are, but
I've
we'll
had
have to go on a
17
dog
years.
walk when she's feeling better.
I love that.
Thank you so much. This was such a blast and everything and more I could have dreamt of. So I appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun, and I look forward to part 2.
Can't wait. See you all next week.